It's been 4 phases and nearly 15 years since the beginning of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and we're still no closer to seeing Big Wheel on screen. But what we do have is a pretty interesting selection of other villains that we've met over the years. Sure, Marvel's developed a reputation for killing off their bad guys early, but there's still plenty of characters ready for another chance at the spotlight, like Bullseye, Scorpion, Justin Hammer, and more. Let's take a look at the strongest MCU villains that could return in the near future. While Eternals may have been met with a somewhat tepid critical reception, there's no doubt that the film introduced some of the MCU's most powerful characters. No, I'm not talking about the Eternals, though they're no slouches either. I'm referring to the Celestials, the massive godlike creatures who originally created the Eternals in the first place. During the events of the film, we found out that the Celestials were born after absorbing the energy of an entire planet, cracking that world open like an eggshell. The Eternals managed to stop a new Celestial from being born on Earth, and some of the team were later taken into space to face their wrath. These revelations set up a ton of potential directions for the Celestials in the MCU, and with the Eternals having basically killed one of their own, I imagine the giant beings won't be too happy with their creations. Speaking of which, we've still got a giant Celestial corpse sticking out of the ocean. I know we got a reference to it in She-Hulk, but that's a big deal, guys. How much you want to bet we're gonna have some new supervillain show up in the future, and he's gonna have some new weapon, and he's gonna say, "I got it from the giant celestial corpse in the ocean," and the heroes are gonna be like, "Oh man, maybe we should have done something about that." With more and more cosmic entities like the Celestials, the Living Tribunal, and even Eternity now being introduced to the MCU, I would imagine that Secret Wars is going to affect every corner of the multiverse. I'm not quite sure how exactly the Celestials will tie into all of that, but considering how much focus they've received lately, it's almost a certainty that they'll play a major role in shaping the future of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Xialing is the sister of Shang-Chi, one of the MCU's newest heroes. The two were raised as the children of Wenwu, the leader of the Ten Rings, but Shang-Chi abandoned the family and ran away to America when he was a teen. Xialing grew cold and spiteful towards her brother for abandoning her to undertake the harsh training of the Ten Rings on her own, and by the time the two reunited, she was a master martial artist whose skills put even Shang-Chi's to shame. The two siblings reconnected and ended their feud, but the post-credit scene of Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings revealed that Xialing had taken over leadership of their father's organization, preparing to continue their goals in her own way. While it's good that she squashed her beef with Shang-Chi, Xialing is still in an incredibly dangerous and powerful position as the head of the Ten Rings, and the first film implied that she actually lied to her brother and told him that she was going to dissolve the group when she actually intended on taking it over. The organization's control stretches across the world, and with it now resting in the hands of someone new, there's a ton of potential for what's to come with them in the MCU. A sequel to the first film has been confirmed to be in production, and that seems like the most likely place for them to return. If you think about it, there would really be no MCU without the Ten Rings, so I hope to see their influence continue to be felt in the years to come. It hasn't actually been too long since we've seen Baron Helmut Zemo in the MCU. The purple-masked villain stole his show in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier Disney Plus series, which ended with Zemo seemingly ready to wreak more havoc on the Marvel Universe. Most fans assumed that he would be a member of the MCU's newest team, the Thunderbolts. But when that group's lineup was officially announced, there was a Baron-sized hole that was hard to ignore. Yes, despite being the founder and original leader of the team in the comics, Zemo was nowhere to be found in the announcement of the film's cast. Right now, there are 3 possibilities that spring to my mind from this. 1, he could be on the team, just excluded from the official announcement for whatever reason. 2, he could serve as the main villain of the film, which would be a fun surprise, and I understand why they'd try to keep that aspect under wraps for now. Or 3, he's not in the movie at all, and Marvel has other plans for him. This last one feels particularly unlikely to me, since he's proven to be such a fan-favorite character, and it seems like it would be an easy slam dunk to include him in this movie. Outside of the Thunderbolts movie, we could also see Zemo make a comeback in Captain America: New World Order, which would feel especially satisfying when taking into account his prior team-up with Sam. Seeing him and the leader match wits would be awesome. And by the way, how cool is it that they're actually bringing him back? I legitimately never thought I'd see the day. Anyways, Zemo is one of the MCU's most well-loved villains, and Marvel Studios is sure to have more plans for him soon.
It's great. Everybody loves
Baron Zemo. Life has truly been good for Daredevil fans recently, with both Charlie Cox's Matt Murdock and Vincent D'Onofrio's Kingpin returning from their Netflix series. Along with those two, it's pretty likely that Karen Page and Foggy Nelson will return as well, but there's one more major character from that show that I'd love to see return to the MCU too. The third season of Daredevil introduced audiences to Benjamin Poindexter, also known as Dex, an FBI agent turned assassin for the Kingpin. Comic fans will recognize Dex as an early version of the supervillain Bullseye, one of the Marvel Universe's deadliest characters. In the comics, Daredevil and Bullseye have a long and violent history, to the point where they're basically arch enemies. Whereas Daredevil's radar senses make him superhuman, Bullseye is a normal person, albeit an incredibly skilled one, as decades of operating as a hitman have given him near-perfect marksmanship. He's gone head-to-head with the Man Without Fear in countless brutal battles, and Season 3 of Daredevil finally set up Dex to take up the mantle of Bullseye, only for the show to be cancelled.
This sucks more than anything that has ever sucked before.
Luckily, as I previously mentioned, the Netflix characters will seemingly be finding new life in phases 5 and 6 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, so I think it's a pretty good assumption to make that Dex will be coming back in Daredevil Born Again. If we're feeling greedy, he could even come back earlier in the Echo series, since we know that both Matt and Kingpin will be returning in that show as well. Dex was by far one of the Netflix series' most feared villains, and it would be perfect to see him come back, fully suited up in his alter ego from the comics and ready to battle it out with Matt Murdock. While she may be best known as one of Earth's mightiest heroes, the MCU's Wanda Maximoff recently turned to evil! After suffering tragedy after tragedy after tragedy in the last few years, Wanda finally snapped and took an entire town hostage in her own Disney Plus series, before moving on to much bigger things like ripping apart the multiverse, and killing a bunch of cameo characters. Ultimately, Wanda was able to see the error of her ways, and seemingly sacrificed herself to destroy the demonic book known as the Darkhold at the end of Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. However, this mysterious flash of red energy, and the fact that we never saw her body, have me pretty convinced that we haven't seen the last of the Scarlet Witch. With the Darkhold gone, Wanda's desire to conquer the multiverse will most likely disappear with it, and I imagine she'll go back into exile for a few years until the Agatha Harkness spin-off series comes a-knockin'. Keeping in mind Wanda's original connection to the X-Men in the comic book source material, I could see her being used as someone who connects the original Avengers-focused era of the MCU with its upcoming mutant era. She's already had her villain moment in Multiverse of Madness, so instead I would imagine they'd have her serve as somewhat of a mentor, helping the younger mutants control and deal with both their newfound powers and their inner turmoil. Lord knows she's got enough experience with both of those things to go around. The dread Dormammu is the ruler of the Dark Dimension, who seeks to expand his domain to encompass all of existence. The demonic being debuted in the first Doctor Strange, where he manipulated Caecilius and the Zealots into aiding him in taking over our world. Luckily, Stephen Strange beat Dormammu by traveling into the Dark Dimension and using the Time Stone to force him to submit. Dormammu promised never to invade Earth again, but after everything that's happened in the MCU since then, I see no reason why he would continue to stick to that promise. If the multiverse is in chaos, and the MCU's prime Earth is the center of it all, then it would be a great window of opportunity for him to return. The post-credits scene of Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness revealed that the Dark Dimension had been affected by an incursion that was so powerful that Clea had to recruit Strange to help her fix it. This seems to suggest that the next time we see Steven, he'll be back in the Dark Dimension. This would be an ideal chance to have him face off once again with his old foe, and with the Time Stone gone, something tells me our resident master of the mystic arts will have a much tougher time with his monstrous opponent. Let's go back to a smaller scale of villain and talk about Matt Gargan. We met him in Spider-Man Homecoming, where he attempted to do a weapons deal with the Vulture and got, in medical terms, messed up. In the film's mid-credits scene, he approached Toomes, trying to recruit him for a team of some kind, and then he disappeared, hasn't been seen since. Gargan's probably the MCU's biggest lingering plot thread at this point, and it's especially noticeable because in the comics, he's better known as the supervillain, the Scorpion. He's one of the Webhead's greatest foes, using an incredibly strong tail that delivers a powerful sting. Homecoming practically paved the way for Gargan to suit up as the Scorpion in the MCU. He's even got a Scorpion tattoo. But quite a bit of time has passed and we haven't heard anything from him since. With Vulture being transported to the Venom/Morbius universe, it seems like whatever initial plans for Scorpion they may have had are now being completely discarded. Which is really too bad, but hey, when it's Morbin time, it's Morbin time. I would love to see Matt Gargan return in Tom Holland's upcoming 4th solo movie as Spider-Man, which will supposedly bring the character back to being a more street-level hero. Scorpion's reappearance would keep things fairly low stakes while still presenting a very serious threat to Spidey himself. Gargan is super clear about what he wants. He doesn't want to blow up the world or rule everything. He just wants to,
take a picture, slice his throat, put his head in a dryer.
Say what you will about the guy. He's got priorities at least. Speaking of low-level Spider-Man villains, I would be amiss not to mention Aaron Davis as well. Fans of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which should be almost everybody because that movie is amazing, will recognize that name as belonging to Miles Morales' uncle, who secretly operates as the supervillain, the Prowler. Davis was introduced into the MCU in Homecoming, where he was saved from a weapons deal gone wrong by Spider-Man, and later provided information for the Webhead. Homecoming already foreshadowed Davis's potential future by showing his desire to pick up some familiar technology.
I got anti-grav climbers. Climbers?
I wouldn't be surprised to learn that, in the years since the events of Homecoming, Aaron managed to acquire some technology similar to those climbers, and suited up as the MCU's Prowler. If that is the case, he'll probably fight the wall crawlers sooner or later, with their conflict inevitably drawing in Aaron's nephew. Tom Holland reportedly still wants to continue playing Spidey for a while, but sooner or later he's gonna step away. If the MCU wants to keep their Spidey stories fresh, there's no better way to do that than to introduce Miles Morales. But in order for that to happen, they'll probably have to bring the Prowler back too. Justin Hammer is a bratty and corrupt businessman with an ego that's even bigger than Tony Stark's, but with none of Tony's skill, charisma, or talent. The plot of Iron Man 2 is driven by Hammer's desire to outdo Stark, which includes teaming up with the supervillain Whiplash and then being betrayed by him. Hammer was sent to Seagate Prison, and apart from a brief cameo in a Marvel one-shot about Trevor Slattery, he's apparently remained locked up. Out of all of Marvel's upcoming projects, I think the Armor Wars series would be the best place for Justin Hammer to come back. Since the show will supposedly focus on Tony Stark's technology being stolen and used by villainous forces, he would fit right in as the culprit. Tony's dead, so as far as Hammer cares, he can help himself to his tech and use it to create some even more powerful weapons and make his grand return. Alternatively, Hammer could show up in the Thunderbolts movie as a Tinkerer type character, creating the team's gadgets and technology. No matter what, Justin Hammer's too fun of a character to just be a one and done, and his comeback would be a welcome blast from the past. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 introduced us to the Sovereign, a race of fanatical, gold-skinned aliens. Their leader Aisha had a bone to pick with the Guardians, and she spent much of the film pursuing them, only to be outwitted and embarrassed by the team. She then decided to create a new perfect warrior to help her destroy the team, paving the way for the eventual MCU debut of Adam Warlock. Adam's already been confirmed to show up in Guardians 3, which I think makes the Sovereign's return an almost certain thing. However, in order to keep things fresh while also paying homage to the comics, it would be fun to see the Sovereign rebrand themselves as the Universal Church of Truth, a villainous group from the comics who worship Adam's evil alternate personality, the Magus. Aisha could be reimagined as the Church's leader in the MCU, now with a specially created and super powerful warrior at her disposal. Alright, let's talk about one more Spider-Man villain. The Master of Illusion, Mysterio, left the webhead topsy-turvy in Spider-Man Far From Home, but our friendly neighborhood hero still managed to fight through his holograms and defeat him once and for all. The villain seemingly died during the film's final battle, but his machinations caused Peter Parker's identity to be leaked to the world, thus setting the stage for Spider-Man No Way Home. Thanks to his use of complex holograms, as well as the fact that we saw him fake his death like twice in the film, I have trouble believing Mysterio's actually dead. I think it's more likely he escaped to menace the webhead another day, leaving behind a series of illusions to cover his tracks. Obviously, his memory and reveal of Spidey's secret identity has been rendered moot, but there's still a lot of potential for stories with Mysterio, especially when it comes to his connection to the Ultimate Universe in the comics. With incursions tearing open the multiverse, it's very possible that we could see an even more powerful variant of the villain, who could serve as either a friend or a foe to Spider-Man. Ultron is a megalomaniacal robot and one of the Avengers' greatest foes, who first appeared in the MCU in Avengers Age of Ultron. In that film, he devised a scheme to lift up and then drop the country of Sokovia, creating an extinction-level event that would destroy all life on Earth. He was defeated by the Avengers and destroyed by his own creation, the Vision, but a variant of him returned in the What If series and gave Uatu the Watcher the fight of his life. In the comics, Ultron's fought the Avengers time and time again, so it's a little disappointing that we've only seen him once in the main MCU. Still, Marvel Studios' usage of the multiverse concept provides the perfect excuse to bring in another variant of the diabolical synthezoid. Lest we forget, Ultron was involved in the original Secret Wars storyline from the 1980s, so an upcoming return could also be perfectly timed to allow him to participate in the MCU's version of that classic story. And now we come to the baddest of the bad, the not-so-jolly purple giant, Thanos. He was the MCU's arch-villain for phases 1 through 3, and his actions changed the multiverse forever. The Avengers may have managed to defeat him twice, but something tells me we haven't seen the last of the Mad Titan. We saw quite a few variants of the villain in the What If series, and I would imagine that there's plenty more we'll meet as the multiverse saga chugs on. What I'm most interested to see is if Thanos has anything to do with the Kang Dynasty or Secret Wars, especially since he had such a memorable moment with Doctor Doom in the latter storyline. It's also possible that we could see him appear in some way in cosmic projects like Guardians 3 or the rumored Nova movie, particularly if we flash back to his off-screen destruction of Xandar before Infinity War. It would be interesting to see Marvel bring back Thanos not as a variant, but instead through the memories of the people he affected, like the Nova Corps or Gamora. All of this to say that when it comes to following him up as the MCU's next big bad, Kang has some pretty big shoes to fill, literally and figuratively. His feet are huge. Hello everybody, I'm Matt Sonic. I created this video for your viewing pleasure, and if you enjoyed it, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel. Let me know in the comments which past villains you'd like to see return to the MCU. Where are my Jan Rog fans out there, huh?